All right, so finally, here's the third and last activity that I wanted to tell you about. And it's basically a for and against discussion. So that's why I've called it advantages and disadvantages. So personally, I find thinking about the advantages and the disadvantages of a topic is a really effective way of getting students to become critical thinkers, because taking pros and cons into account helps you to get the whole picture of a situation. How do I do this with my students? Well, first of all, I select a controversial statement that I believe will be interesting for students. For example, it's better to study a subject you love than something that will lead to a steady job. The next step was dividing students into two groups. One of the groups was in favor of the statement and the other one against it. So every group had to come up with reasons and as many arguments as possible to support their side to the argument. To make the brainstorming process more efficient, I usually put students in pairs within the same group. So to start with, they only need to talk to one person before they can actually share their ideas with the whole group. And then once all the pairs have some solid arguments and justifications and reasons to support their opinion, all the pairs get together to share their ideas and then make a final list of all the points they're going to use to defend their viewpoint. Finally, the last stage of the activity is regrouping students and putting one student from the for group and one student from the against group together. And I then project the controversial statement again, so the initial sentence again, and I give students 2 or 3 minutes to try to convince their opponent, let's say, about the other side of the argument, so about their side of the argument. To do this, I usually set up a timer so students are aware of how long they've been talking for and how long they have left. Apart from being a lot of fun, this generates great discussions and students really give it their all to convince their opponent about their point of view. So this is a really real-life experience. If you want to make the activity a bit more competitive, let's say, you can also get a third student to join the group as a bit of a moderator or a referee, as you'd like to call it, and they can write down how many for and against arguments are given by each of the students of competing, and in the amount of time, whoever gives the most solid arguments wins. Also, to move this activity up a notch, I give students cards with connectors that they need to use when they're speaking, and they play the cards as if this were a card game. They play the cards every time they use a connector. So when I do the activity this way, students need to use up all their cards before the end of the discussion. So the discussion actually becomes a bit of a card game, like I said, and this adds an extra element of fun and competition. Finally, in another session as a follow-up activity, I usually get my students to have the same debate, but in written form. And my colleague Marta from work recommended the website Kialo. I'm not sure you'll be familiar with Kialo, but this is great for discussions because it enables you to create online debates where students can post their for and against arguments and then also write a reply to their classmates' arguments or justifications. And for an extra challenge, when we do this activity after the oral discussion, I ask students to swap sides. So students who defended, let's say, the for side, then they have to defend the against side of the argument. And that, I find, gives them the whole sort of picture about this topic, and it gets them to think a lot more and basically to become a lot more empathetic. Okay, so this is what a Kialo discussion looks like, and you see that there are two sides to the statement, the pros and the cons. So tasks like this one are also great writing practice, and they help students to become better at brainstorming ideas for argumentative essays like the ones they're going to have to do in exams, and also to become better at justifying their opinions and giving reasons. So all in all, I find discussions, either oral or written, are generally very effective to get students to think, to analyze situations, to become more critical, and also, like I said, to become more empathetic with other people's points of view.